1. Good cop/bad cop. The good cop/bad cop technique is a classic and widely recognized method used in interrogations. It involves two interrogators who take on opposing roles to manipulate the suspect's emotions and responses. The bad cop is aggressive, accusatory, and intimidating, often threatening severe consequences if the suspect doesn't cooperate. This creates a high-stress environment for the suspect. In contrast, the good cop steps in as the voice of reason and compassion. They appear sympathetic, understanding, and protective, offering the suspect a way out of the stressful situation created by the bad cop. The good cop may provide incentives, such as leniency or comfort, to encourage the suspect to confess or provide information. The psychological principle behind this technique is to create a sense of relief and gratitude towards the good cop. The suspect, feeling cornered and desperate for a reprieve from the bad cop's hostility, is more likely to trust and confide in the good cop. This dynamic plays on basic human emotions, fear, relief, and the desire for approval. However, this technique can be ethically questionable as it involves manipulation and can lead to false confessions. In modern interrogation practices, especially in legal and ethical frameworks, reliance on such techniques is often discouraged in favor of more straightforward and humane methods. Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love. 2. Reid Technique. The Reid Technique is one of the most well-known methods of interrogation in law enforcement. Developed by John E. Reid in the mid-20th century, it is designed to extract confessions from suspects through a structured approach. The technique is broken down into three main stages: factual analysis, the interview, and the interrogation. Factual analysis. Before the actual interrogation begins, investigators gather and analyze all available evidence. This helps to identify potential suspects and determine the likelihood of their guilt. Behavioral analysis interview, BAI. This non-accusatory interview aims to observe the suspect's behavior. Investigators look for verbal and nonverbal cues that might indicate deception, such as changes in tone or body language. 9-step interrogation. If the suspect is deemed likely to be guilty, the formal interrogation begins. The 9 steps are: direct positive confrontation. The interrogator directly accuses the suspect of committing the crime. Theme development. The interrogator presents a moral justification for the crime, making it easier for the suspect to confess. Handling denials. The interrogator discourages any denials to maintain control of the conversation. Overcoming objections. When the suspect offers excuses, the interrogator counters them with logical arguments. Getting the suspect's attention. The interrogator tries to get the suspect's full attention, often by appearing more understanding and sympathetic. Handling the suspect's passive mood. The interrogator encourages the suspect to focus on the moral justification and admit to the crime. Presenting an alternative question. The interrogator offers 2 scenarios, both of which imply guilt, but one is more socially acceptable. Having the suspect relate various details. The suspect is asked to recount the details of the crime, solidifying the confession. Converting the oral confession to a written one. The final step involves getting the suspect to formally document their confession. The Reid technique has been criticized for its potential to produce false confessions, especially when used on vulnerable individuals. Critics argue that its confrontational style and psychological pressure can lead to innocent people admitting to crimes they didn't commit. As a result, there has been a shift towards more ethical and evidence-based interrogation methods. 3. Direct confrontation. Direct confrontation is one of the most straightforward interrogation techniques. It involves directly addressing the suspect with the evidence or accusation at hand. The idea is to confront the individual head-on, leaving little room for ambiguity or evasion. This method can be particularly effective when the interrogator has solid evidence and wishes to observe the suspect's immediate reaction, which can often reveal guilt or innocence through nonverbal cues. For example, if a suspect is believed to have committed a theft, the interrogator might start by saying, "We have evidence that you were at the scene of the crime when the theft occurred." This direct approach forces the suspect to respond, often leading to defensive behavior, denial, or unexpected admissions. This technique relies on the psychological pressure of the confrontation itself. When faced with direct accusations, individuals may feel cornered and more likely to reveal inconsistencies in their stories or even confess. However, it requires the interrogator to be confident and prepared with factual evidence to back up their claims. If used improperly or without sufficient evidence, it can backfire, causing the suspect to become more defensive or uncooperative. 4. Enhanced interrogation. Enhanced interrogation refers to methods that go beyond standard interrogative practices, often involving physical or psychological stress to elicit information. These techniques are highly controversial and include methods like waterboarding, sleep deprivation, and sensory overload. The rationale behind enhanced interrogation is to break down the subject's resistance through extreme discomfort or fear. For instance, waterboarding simulates drowning and can create intense fear and panic, which proponents argue make the subject more likely to divulge information. Sleep deprivation, on the other hand, exhausts the individual to the point of mental and physical breakdown, reducing their ability to resist questioning. Critics argue that these methods can lead to false confessions, as individuals may say anything to stop the pain or stress. Moreover, the ethical and legal implications of such techniques are significant, with many viewing them as forms of torture. The use of enhanced interrogation is heavily debated and regulated, with many countries and organizations banning or severely restricting its practice. 5. Positive confrontation. Positive confrontation is a technique where the interrogator presents the evidence in a non-threatening manner, suggesting that the suspect can benefit from telling the truth. This approach combines elements of confrontation with an attitude of understanding and potential leniency. For example, the interrogator might say, "We know you were involved in the incident, but if you cooperate with us now, we can help you." This method aims to create a sense of trust and hope in the suspect, making them believe that confession could lead to a better outcome for them. This technique relies heavily on the interrogator's ability to balance authority with empathy. The goal is to make the suspect feel that they have something to gain from being honest, such as reduced charges or a more favorable legal outcome. It's a psychological game of carrot and stick, where the promise of a positive result encourages cooperation. 6. Emotional appeal. Emotional appeal involves tapping into the suspect's emotions to elicit a confession or information. This technique leverages the individual's feelings of guilt, fear, empathy, or even love to persuade them to talk. The interrogator might bring up the impact of the suspect's actions on their family, friends, or victims to create an emotional response. For example, saying, "Think about how your family will feel when they find out what you've done," can stir feelings of guilt and remorse, making the suspect more likely to confess. Alternatively, showing empathy and understanding can create a bond, making the suspect more comfortable and willing to open up. This method requires the interrogator to be highly perceptive and emotionally intelligent, able to read the suspect's emotional state and respond appropriately. It can be incredibly effective but also requires a careful balance, as pushing too hard can cause the suspect to shut down or become defensive. 7. Deception. Deception in interrogation involves the use of false information or misleading statements to trick the suspect into revealing the truth. This can include lying about the evidence, fabricating stories, or presenting fake witnesses. The goal is to create a scenario where the suspect believes that the truth is already known, prompting them to confess or provide more details. For example, an interrogator might say, "We have your fingerprints at the scene," even if they don't, to pressure the suspect into admitting their presence. Alternatively, they might fabricate a story about an accomplice confessing, creating a sense of inevitability that encourages the suspect to come clean. Deception is a double-edged sword. While it can be effective in breaking down a suspect's resistance, it must be used carefully and ethically. Excessive or inappropriate use can lead to false confessions and undermine the credibility of the interrogation process. Additionally, legal constraints in many jurisdictions limit the extent to which deception can be used. 8. Leading questions. Leading questions are designed to guide the suspect towards a particular answer or admission. These questions suggest the desired response within the question itself, subtly steering the suspect's answers. This technique can be used to confirm suspicions or to fill in gaps in the interrogator's knowledge. For example, asking, "You were at the store around 8 p.m., weren't you?" implies that the suspect was there and encourages them to confirm it. Leading questions can also be used to introduce new information subtly, such as, "When you took the money, did you plan to return it?" This method relies on the suspect's tendency to agree with the interrogator's statements, especially if they are unsure or nervous. It can be a powerful tool for gathering information, but it must be used judiciously to avoid leading the suspect into false admissions or creating contradictions that can be exploited later. 9. Cognitive interviewing. Cognitive interviewing is a technique designed to enhance the recall of witnesses and suspects by focusing on their cognitive processes. It involves several stages to help the individual remember details more accurately and thoroughly. Context reinstatement. The interviewer encourages the person to mentally recreate the environment and context of the event, including sights, sounds, and feelings. Report everything. The individual is asked to report all details, no matter how insignificant they may seem. Recall in different orders. The person is asked to recount the event in different chronological orders, such as backward. Change perspectives. The individual is encouraged to describe the event from different perspectives, such as from another person's viewpoint. This method helps to trigger memories that might otherwise be overlooked and reduces the influence of leading questions or interviewer bias. It relies on the psychological principles of memory and cognition, making it a highly effective tool for gathering detailed and accurate information. 10. Kinesic Interviewing. Kinesic interviewing focuses on interpreting the suspect's body language and nonverbal cues to assess truthfulness and uncover hidden emotions. This technique requires the interrogator to be skilled in reading subtle physical signals, such as facial expressions, gestures, and posture. For example, an interrogator might notice that a suspect's body language becomes defensive when certain topics are mentioned, indicating discomfort or potential guilt. Micro-expressions, fleeting facial expressions that reveal true emotions, can also provide valuable insights. This method combines traditional questioning with careful observation of nonverbal communication, allowing the interrogator to adjust their approach based on the suspect's reactions. It requires a high level of expertise and training to be effective, as misinterpretation of body language can lead to incorrect conclusions. 11. Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP. Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP, is an approach that explores the relationship between neurological processes, language, and behavioral patterns. In the context of interrogation, NLP techniques are used to build rapport, influence the suspect's thoughts, and encourage cooperation. For example, an interrogator might use mirroring, subtly mimicking the suspect's body language and speech patterns to create a sense of connection and trust. Language patterns and specific phrasing can also be used to steer the suspect's thoughts and responses in a desired direction. NLP relies on the idea that language and communication can be strategically used to influence behavior and perceptions. While some view it as a powerful tool for effective communication, others criticize it for lacking scientific validation. In interrogation, it can be used to create a more conducive environment for information gathering, but it must be applied ethically and carefully. 12. Context manipulation. Context manipulation involves changing the environment or circumstances of the interrogation to influence the suspect's state of mind and behavior. This can include altering the physical setting, timing, or the presence of certain individuals to create a psychological impact. For example, an interrogator might choose a small, windowless room to create a sense of isolation and vulnerability. Alternatively, they might conduct the interrogation at an unexpected time, such as late at night, to catch the suspect off guard. This technique aims to control the external factors that can affect the suspect's mental state, making them more likely to cooperate or reveal information. It requires careful planning and understanding of psychological principles to be effective, as the wrong manipulation can lead to resistance or increase stress without yielding useful results.